Hey, this is Mike Buckley, co-owner and CEO of the United States SailGP team, and this is the Sports Business Conversations podcast from ADC Partners.
Hey, this is Dave Almy of ADC Partners, and I want you to imagine, just for a sec, about driving your car about 65 miles an hour down a freeway. It's not so hard to imagine, right? I mean, nothing very special about it. Chances are you might do it every day. Okay, but now I want you to imagine you're sitting on the roof of that car while it's speeding down an uneven road at 65 miles an hour, while someone is also throwing water in your face. That, my friend, is SailGP, which has about as much in common with traditional sailing as a biplane has in common with a fighter jet. That excitement is what drew this episode's guest Mike Buckley to the sport. Already a world champion sailor, Buckley was restless to find his next challenge. After a couple of unsuccessful attempts to assemble an America's Cup syndicate, his future arrived in the form of SailGP. Mike is now the co-owner of SailGP's Team USA, and competes in races around the world. In our conversation, we go into how the kid from small-town Cape Cod fell in love with competitive sailing. We talk about the acquisition of the United States team, working with his A-list of celebrity investors, and how he harnesses his competitive instincts on the water and in the boardroom. So thanks for listening in on my conversation with Mike Buckley, co-founder and strategist for the United States SailGP team. Mike Buckley, you grew up in Cape Cod, but kind of ironically, you didn't really come to sailing until a bit later in life, right? So it didn't really catch up with you until you got to high school. So can you reflect on that moment when you first really sunk your teeth into the sport of sailing and when it became a part of you? What drew you so strongly to the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the Cape, as you said, and my mom always made it clear that the ocean and the water was special. She didn't necessarily say that, but I think, in between odd jobs that she'd do, would always find our way, even if it was for 5 minutes, over to kind of the local beach to pick up a seashell or fish or whatever it may be. And I always had, an affinity for boats.
Yeah.
I'd see all these boats on a dock. I'd wonder why they were sitting on a dock and not being used. And
seems counterintuitive. What the hell are they doing on there?
Yeah. But to have the resources to have one of these boats means you got to be working all the time, right? It took me a long time to realize that. But yeah, I ended up at Tabor Academy, which really changed my life. And the school by the sea. It's this beautiful boarding school on the water. And if you don't love the ocean, you sort of have no business being there.
Yeah. Why did you go in the first place?
Yeah, just watch these kids go out and race sailboats all the time. And I'd done a little bit of recreational boating, but not on the racing side or anything. And yeah, just my hockey career came to a very quick end when I got to boarding school and with a boy competing against men. And
yeah, they don't mess around in the independent school league in ice hockey, I'll tell you.
No, they don't. That was a rude awakening. And I was really lucky to get involved in sailing. And I kind of took the same mentality that I had in other sports into sailing. And that was fairly unique and really never looked back.
What was that mentality? If you had to describe yourself, was that if you were an ice hockey player, I'm assuming there was a certain aggressiveness to the approach. Is that the way that played out for you?
Yeah. I mean, probably, right.
Yeah.
For me, it was everything. It was my place to compete. And I saw it as an opportunity to get into college and get an education and after, a career. And yeah, for me, it was everything. And when you play hockey, every shift is your everything or you're going to get your head taken off. And, I kind of took that same mentality into sailing. And I think a lot of the kids were doing it because maybe their parents made them or they grew up at a yacht club. And that's not really how I grew up. And it was, I guess, above everything else, it was just really fun for me. It was a new challenge. I was learning every day. All these kids were way better at it than I was. And I knew if I didn't improve every day that I wouldn't be on the team for very long. And I became obsessed with it.
Yeah, and it's probably really your first access to boats too, like you said. I mean, owning a boat is not an inexpensive venture. So getting to a place where you could literally probably just jump into the boat and go take it out and have that connection to it. It was probably the first time you'd really had that opportunity.
Yeah, at Tabor they make you go to class, so you can't get out anytime. But after school, you can take boats out.
Yeah.
But in college, it turns out they don't make you go to class.
Yeah, that was my challenge too.
I spent a lot of time just taking boats out during the day and trying to get better at my craft. But yeah, there's something special about being on the water, and boats are fun, and yeah, being in the sun or the weather or whatever it is. Yeah, it's unique.
Now, so you've had like we talked about, you went to college and then you went on to a remarkably successful career in professional sailing, including two world championships. And I think most people would be satisfied with being a world champion sailor. I mean, that's not a bad little title to be able to put against your resume. But that's clearly not the case for you. So at what point did you start to think about, I need to do more in this sport than just being good at the competitive level? And then how did SailGP become the focus of that attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody defines success a little bit differently, and I don't look at what I've done so far as necessarily a success. I've had, some moments of success, and I've had plenty of moments, that I'd love to forget about, but that, kind of drive me forward, frankly. And I would find myself coming home from races, whether I won or whether I got my butt kicked, and I'd always sort of feel the same way on Sunday night or Monday morning, bored. And, I'd see what other people, all my friends, had real jobs. And so, they were nowhere to be found during the week when I was home, or the few days that I was home every month. And, I was bored, and I wanted more. And, I looked at what some of these other athletes were doing in other sports. And, I heard LeBron James talk about being more than an athlete. And I started just doing some research on, we think of these athletes as what they do on the court or on the field, but there's a lot that goes on in their life off the field, off the court, creating businesses, creating production companies, charity, inspiring people. And there's a lot more to it than what I really knew early on. And so I wanted a piece of that. I wanted to change our sport. I wanted to bring more opportunities to kids that grew up the way I grew up. Sailing, changed my life. It's shown me the world. It's given me endless opportunity. And, sitting on the couch Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after a race, isn't gonna help you achieve your dreams. And
that's a lot of quiet.
Yeah. So I was just kind of trying to figure out how to move the ball forward. I tried a few things in the America's Cup, and got really close, but that's a really, really hard business model to crack, and fell flat a couple times, but learned a ton along the way. Kind of taught myself how to do sponsorship, and when I started, I thought of sponsorship as a logo on a boat or on a thing, and sponsorship has evolved light years from from those days. And kind of had to learn about storytelling and hospitality and unique experiences and what the value that you need to be able to deliver these potential sponsors. And so I learned a ton in the America's Cup, and but had some really, really hard days, right? I mean, fell short a couple times, and that's not a nice feeling, but I think a lot of competitors share the same value in that we love winning, but we hate losing more. And, that's something that drives me. And I didn't want to go out like that, and dust yourself off, get back up and try again. And that's what I did with SailGP. And it was, kind of the stars aligned. Timing, can sometimes be everything in life. And it was right time, right place. And I'd done some of the work before that kind of allowed me to jump into this.
I'm going to use your words here because I did read an article when you were talking about some of the past America's Cup experiences that you had. You sort of alluded to it, but you didn't do the full thing. It says, I kind of fell flat on my face with some of those America's Cups, right? You said it's incredibly challenging putting together a syndicate and highly competitive, and it needs just a little bit of revenue to go for that. What made the pursuit beyond just the right place, right time, right? There's the luck aspect of it. What lessons do you think you learned pursuing America's Cup that you were able to apply successfully towards acquiring the SailGP team?
Yeah, I think a guy named Michael Fortenbow asked me when I was doing the America's Cup stuff, what's the business model? And I didn't have an answer because frankly, there really isn't one for the America's Cup. It's around patronage, and you're asking people to donate money to support your dream or the vision or their dream, and you're not giving them anything in return for that except for maybe a return on how they feel at the end of it. Their name is on a trophy, or maybe it's not. But there's no, you're not saying in 5 years, you're going to put in 100 million and I'm going to give you 120 million back. Right. It's just, you're going to donate to this. And that's really
a lot of ego,
There's a lot of ego. There's an enormous amount of politics, which I was not ready for. And again, you didn't have this business model to kind of anchor on, where when you have this, a very defined business model and a business plan, you can navigate the politics and the egos because it's about money.
But there's no template for you in this regard, right? I mean, you're kind of just piecing this together with, baling wire and string to a certain degree.
Yeah, you're trying to learn as you go, right? Yeah. And I didn't always spend enough time focused on class. I was always focused on sailing, and the two attempts at getting to the America's Cup start line was my version of Harvard Business School. It was happening in real time, whether I liked it or not, and you had to have an answer when somebody asked you a question, or when the press called, or this, that, or the other, when you're speaking to a sponsor. And yeah, with SailGP, the main difference is there's a very simple business model. And that is something that was very obvious from day one when we kind of looked at the opportunity. That allowed, I could anchor on that business model to investors, not patrons. Here's
some more meat on it for you.
Yeah, here's what we project the returns are going to be in 5 years and 10 years. When you're speaking to partners, sponsors, here are the eyeballs that we, that we currently have. Here's what we project. Here's the growth backed up by data. And that's just a very different conversation. And you still have the passion because it's sport, but you have a business. Yeah. And I always come back to what Michael said to me 5 years ago: what's your business model? And there wasn't one, and now there is. And credit to Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts for creating it. And we've been able to come in and kind of expand that business model and play a part in growing SailGP and our team.
So for those who, SailGP has done such a remarkable job of staying visible and as one of these new and up and coming and exciting sports leagues. But for those people who are unfamiliar with it, can you just give a high level overview of the sport? Because I think it's not exactly what people think of when they hear competitive sailing. You're watching from the shore and there's boats drifting out there and the white sails and all that kind of thing. It's a different animal than what I think a lot of people perceive in competitive sailing. Yeah,
the easiest comparison is Formula One on the water. Yeah. And what Larry and Russell, saw as an opportunity is sailing is this really amazing sport, and the technology has gone from boats going 6 miles an hour to boats going 60 or 70 miles an hour in a very short period of
span of time. Yeah.
But in kind of older formats, nobody got to see these boats going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. And they said, we got to change this. We've got to bring our racing closer to the fans. We can't require all our fans to get in boats and go out miles to see us. We've got to bring the fans closer to sailing. So we race in, 13 cities around the world. Typically we're right off of, a city front in New York City, where we race between the Statue of Liberty, the Financial District, and Governor's Island. So you could be, there's a couple dozen high rises in New York where you can watch the race right from your office or your apartment. There's hospitality set up on Governor's Island, and we have a great TV product, and we try to duplicate that everywhere we go in the world, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all over Europe. We're going to be in Rio next year, Australia, New Zealand. And yeah, it's really exciting because people can come and experience it. And typically when they see the boats up close, they're just blown away with the scale, right? These boats have 100-foot tall wings and go, extremely fast. It's like, 60 or 70 miles an hour doesn't sound that fast from like a race car or driving your car down the highway. But what I like to say is, what I like to say is you're driving your car down the highway going 60 and you get out of the car and you climb up on the roof and you stand or sit up on the roof in the rain.
It's going to feel a little quicker.
Yeah, that's what it's like to race an F50.
Yeah, I think it's indicative that it's a wing, not a sail, which I think speaks specifically to what we're talking about from an intersection of sports and technology, and what separates this from what people have probably perceived as being competitive sailing in the past.
Yeah, we stick to, instead of sailors, we say athletes. Instead of a skipper, we say a driver. Our sail is a wing. It's literally a vertical airplane wing. So when next time you are rumbling down the runway and you look out the window and you see that wing that sticks out horizontally, the main wing, that's what we have vertically. And at one stage, I believe it was the largest airplane wing in the world. I'm not sure if it still is. There might be one bigger, but it's giant.
And is that language, was that intentional to create that distinction between expectation and where this was headed?
Yeah, I don't know the exact reason why Russell and Larry kind of did the things that they did, but I've always tried to. I'm an outsider to my sport because I didn't grow up in racing and sailing and things like that. And when I'm explaining to my friends what I do, I try to use their language instead of making it harder than it needs to be and saying port and starboard. It means right and left. And everybody knows what a driver is. Any kid can identify the driver of a boat with the driver of a car or a golf cart or whatever the thing that their toy in the living room. I want to drive that thing. So I've always gone for easy when it comes to describing what we do. We race. We have a race, not a regatta. What's a regatta, right? It's everybody knows what a race is.
Something you make with lasagna with.
Yeah, and like I said, let's not make this harder than it needs to be, especially when you're an emerging sport. If you want to get fancy down the road and teach people new names and things like that, like people are interested in learning, but like right now, let's make it easy for them.
Well, let's also, sailing obviously has a perception of, I'll just say what it is, that elitism, right? This is a sport of wealthy people. And I'm not saying it's not, but if you remove basic terminology that creates that barrier between, whatever, and acceptance and participation, go to race from regatta, from skipper to driver, and all those kinds of things, it does kind of de-escalate that perception of that's a sport for other people. That can be a sport for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I would argue that all sports have a bit of an elitist side of them, right? Sports are so expensive. Mm-hmm. You want to take your family to a game at Madison Square Garden.
Good luck.
And it's all the way in the worst seats in the house. It's going to cost you $1,000 for the night, right? Sports in general have gotten really, really expensive to kind of either view or participate in. But yeah, sailing has that, that elite kind of perception. And yeah, we're trying to knock it down. We don't want to, we would love, wealthy consumers to come to our races, but I want all consumers to come to our races. I want everybody to experience this, I'm not necessarily that interested in making, professional sailors lined up, to be mainstream. But what I am interested in is, having people be lined up to learn how to swim and put their feet in the water and get on a boat for the first time and experience getting splashed with a wave and being out in the sun and seeing the weather come in and all those things that I think that
going back to those special moments
should be able to experience. And Yeah, we try to do that with our partners. We just launched a clothing line globally with Tommy Hilfiger, and a lot of it's around dreaming and doing and what the American dream is. So yeah, I think that's a big part of what we're trying to create.
Now, you bought the team with Ryan McMillan. He was a founding engineer at Uber. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your partnership with Ryan and how you've worked together to acquire the team. Did your respective roles come naturally? I'm assuming they did. And how have they evolved as this whole thing has started to roll out for you both?
Yeah, so Ryan and I got introduced actually kind of in back when I was flopping around trying to get to the America's Cup, and we became quick friends. And
we got to come up with a different expression than flopping around. I feel like it was a bit more intentional than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Fish on the dock.
Yeah, we became really good buddies, and he's obviously he's a brilliant guy, right? Yeah. He's incredibly intelligent and articulate, and we hit it off, and I always bounced ideas off of him. And ironically, we're friends with his now wife, who they met at our Christmas party. So we have an incredible kind of family connection as well. And when this opportunity at SailGP came about, he was my first call, and I said, I think I finally have that
the thing
model that I didn't have before. Can you take a look at this, right? And yeah, he loved it. He loved it right from the jump. Okay. And we never really looked back.
Had you guys been looking at other opportunities to own together previously, or was SailGP that's it?
Yeah, I think Ryan had been looking around at some other sports and ownership. For me, I was always like very interested in putting American sailing back on the map. That's been my passion point for the last 10 years, and had always had my eye on SailGP, but never dreamed that Larry would sell the Team USA. So I didn't really even inquire about Team USA. Yeah, so again, the stars aligned. He'd been looking at doing some things in other sports. I was hyper focused on this, and yeah, we really liked what we saw, and the work that I'd put in before in the America's Cup. We had the right people involved, so we were able to very quickly shift that from there to here.
Take those learnings that you had previously and apply them, and then marry that, I'm assuming, with Ryan's acumen in evaluating and looking at the business plan and everything that went along like those.
Yeah. And back to what I referenced, the Harvard Business School education, right? I mean, that's, he's been a big part of that. And I think what you learn is, we're both very different people. We both think about things from a very different point of view. And that's a really good partnership. If you have two people that think exactly alike all the time, what's the point of the other person? You're not getting any value from that other person. And so for us, we have very similar goals, and we come at them from a very different direction. Same with my investors, right? I can pick up the phone and call Mark Lazary at Avenue Capital, or his team, John and Todd, and ask them questions that I don't know the answers to, right? And they come at it from a very different lens. And our celebrity investors, and you tap into how they're doing it in their specific space. And, Ryan and I, right from the start, it's like, we got to put a bunch of people that think very, very differently if we're going to scale this thing.
So you acknowledge that from the get-go, right? Even this fact that the two of you came at it from a different approach, but there was still a desire to get other competing insights and opinions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think if you look back to when we bought the team, November 2023, if you look at our investor group, I think it's very obvious the way we were thinking. We wanted to come out of the gate with the most diverse ownership group in the history of our sport, and we did that. And that's something I'm really, really proud of. But what you get with that is the ability to call on these people and learn from them and learn their perspective. And how did Lindsey Vonn, change the sport of skiing, right? How is DJ Khaled, still bringing crowds and crowds of people to his concerts, and listening to his records, and bringing just epic people together. Well, how did Mark win an NBA championship with the Milwaukee Bucks and buy a team for $300 million and sell it for $3.5 billion 10 years later, right? All these things, and if you go about things yourself, you have to be right all the time. And if you go at things with a hell of a team, it allows you to kind of push the limits, right? And people will keep you in check, and people will throw out other ideas, and usually get a much better product.
Let's talk about the investors for just a second, because this is a pretty high profile list of people who you have partnering with the team, and it's very high profile and very diverse, as you talked about. You got everybody from Gary Vaynerchuk, Lindsey Vonn, DeAndre Hopkins, Issa Rae. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on and on. You talked about the differing perspectives, how DJ Khaled can bring, how does he bring those people together, the ideas that he brings on those kinds of things. But can you talk about that strategy to attract like those non-institutional investors? And clearly they're bringing other things to the table besides just capital and different opinions. What are some of the other things that you really have found to be invaluable by having some of those large print names associated with the team and SailGP as a whole?
Well, again, it's the ability to pick up the phone and call them and ask them for advice. And, they're all winners. And, that's something that, is
these are successful people.
Yeah, you don't get access to people. It's really hard to get access to people like this, right? And to be able to have that is a huge advantage.
Well, when you've got a podcast platform like this one, I mean, it's really just picking up the phone, Mike.
When you got DJ Griffin, right? He's one of the first electric DJs to bring in this live set where he's playing the drums and his electric guitar, and he's like reshaped, how that space, does their live performances, and how do we think about that when we're doing a race, because we have to catch up and then keep up and then try to pass our competitors, right? There's all these other sports properties in the world that are innovating, and the second you stop, they're just going to leave you in the dust. Yeah. So I think, again, like Josie Altidore, he's one of the best soccer players, American soccer players of all time. And to be able to pick his brain on team culture, and to have conversations with him on how he's building his business and buying a piece of the Buffalo Bills, right? It's just all value add. And I think what's really exciting is that all of our celebrities, they invested their own money because of the business case.
Yeah.
And in a lot of these teams that you look at in the world, there's free equity handed out to celebrities. But on our team, they invested because they believed in it. And, I said to all of them, like, we're going to change our sport. And if you want to be part of it, we'd love to have you. And so, yeah, I think I want to unlock more of that. I think we're only in the first inning of what we can all do together. One of the difficult things with having such epic, people in our ecosystem is that to be that successful, you have to work really, really hard. And that means you're really, really busy. So, getting schedules to align and things like that.
I can't even imagine.
Always a challenge, but yeah, I think what we have ahead of us is going to be is really exciting.
You've spoken a little bit about the imperative of building great teams, both on and off the water. Now, you have a ton of obviously experience on the athletic side of that, of being a competitor and having to build a team that can be seamless on the water. And anybody who's ever watched competitive sailing, America's Cup, I mean, it's a lot of bodies in a very small space working very closely together in a highly, highly charged environment, right? So to have a close, trusting team is essential. What's the biggest crossover for you as you start to think about being in the boardroom side of that? What tools or lessons did you learn about competing on the water that you're able to translate into the business environment? What strategies work, and how do you find yourself adjusting that approach?
I personally think it's one and the same.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's that way in every sport, but in sailing, for me, most of my career, I was a tactician, which means you're kind of making the decisions on the boat, and you're doing it based on a lot of unknown, right? The wind, the waves, you try to go with what you see, and you try to make good decisions, and you try to not make two bad decisions in a row. You don't know what your competitors are going to do. You think but you don't know 100.
Very dynamic.
It's dynamic. It's about making good decisions. It's about empowering your teammates to make good decisions. It's about them empowering you to make to feel like you can fail or not be afraid to fail.
But
I
not
think
lingering on bad past decisions too, right? Because the moment's gone.
moment's gone, can't change it. If you could change the past, you'd leave Elon Musk in the dust, right?
That's a different investment.
yeah, and you can't, and so you got to move forward. And yeah, I think I'm finding that side of it very, very similar. Obviously, as I transition out of racing myself, it's a little bit different in that you miss the competition of the sport. But what is so fun about this for me is that now I get that competition in the boardroom and in our sponsorship discussions and at the office every day, right? We're still working in sport, and sports is a giant competition. And so I get to kind of tick that box off my, personal cravings list every day, because no 2 days are alike. And the second I walk into the office, or actually hours before I walk into the office, there's something that's happened on my phone that I'm having to react to and try to make a good decision, or at least not make two bad ones.
Right. Now, you're also, because you're still competing, you're something of a unicorn in sports.
About that.
No, there's a message here, right? Because you're one of the few people owners who've actually competed for the team. I mean, I think there's a ton of people who've been like coaches and players and things like that, but I had to look it up. I think it's like Mario Lemieux was one of the only, so not bad company to be in. Mario Lemieux bought a part of the Penguins and continued to play with them for a while. How do you manage that unique status of being owner / competitor? Is it pretty straightforward, or does that present its own unique challenges?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think about it a ton. The one thing I do think about is I need to make sure that I'm willing to do anything that I ask anyone else to do, right? And I think that if I'm always anchored in that, then nobody's gonna look at me and say Mike's treating himself, in a different way than he is us.
Stuck in the owner's box.
And so I try to always make sure I'm the first one at the gym, and I try to make sure I'm the last one that goes to sleep, and things like that. And, when things aren't going your way, which most of this season didn't go our way, you got to be the one that's out in front of it. And, you don't get to just go out there and puff your chest out when you start out with a podium and you finish strong. I've got to be the one that's out there when we're not doing well, and let our teammates go out there when we are doing well. And so the racing side for me is not going to last forever, but I think your teammates, whether it be your teammates in the office, your teammates on a boat, or whatever thing that you're doing in your life, if as long as they can't look at you and say he treats himself differently than he treats us, or that he expects from us, then I think you're okay. Yeah. But I certainly, Mario Lemieux is an absolute legend. So I certainly don't feel comfortable having my name in the same sentence as his. But I think
I got it written right there. Mike
what
Buckley.
he saw, and part of what I see is like this opportunity for athletes to get into ownership, and to have more skin in the game. And that's something that I've been outspoken about, and I try to talk to my teammates about. And there's other ways to make money, off the court, off the field, off the boat, whatever you want to call it. Speaking engagements and brand deals, and other things that are scalable, because competing every weekend is tough as a person, and you never know when your time is up from competing. So it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, trying to bring more opportunities like this, right? I mean, again, that's a thing with Josie, and Issa Rae just bought a piece of a soccer team, and it's exciting. It's exciting to be somewhere towards the front of this, but I hope it opens a floodgate for other athletes to do similar and bigger things.
I mean, SailGP is clearly experiencing success. I think, like we talked about early on, it's like any list of up and coming or next gen sports leagues generally has SailGP on that list as something to keep an eye on, and particularly with more races and more teams are coming online. So with that in mind, how does this trajectory keep going? How do you take this and continue to elevate it? What are the key things that you look at as you look forward down the, I was going to say the road, but clearly there's a channel or whatever it is that we want to say for sailing. What do you feel like are those essential pieces that you want to make sure the sport keeps its eye on?
Yeah, I've been using the last couple of weeks that basically, 3 weeks ago, our race, which was on CBS, had 3.5 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Same day, Formula One had 1.5. Our race had more viewers than the Ryder Cup finals, the U.S. Open men's finals, the women's soccer finals, and I think one other major sporting event that just popped out of the back of my head.
Yeah.
So that's an enormous amount of viewership. So in New York City, where I live, CBS is probably on in, 75% of the sports bars in New York City. And my face or my teammates' faces were up on the screen. We could walk into any of those sports bars and nobody would know who we are. To me, that's the opportunity.
Okay.
Not because I want anyone in a sports bar to know who I am, but, how do you create the fandom? We have an enormous amount of fans that are, kind of arm's length away. How do we bring them closer to us? How do we tell them about our personalities, the funny person, the angry person, the sad person, the boring person, whatever the thing is, the scandal, the drama, how hard this is, how do we do what Drive to Survive did for Formula One, right? We learned about Daniel Ricciardo's smile, Max's killer instinct. Lewis is a great driver and also wants to save the world, right? Like all these different things we learned about them as people.
We know about them as people.
And no one actually cared about whether they won or lost. They cared about their personalities and their life and things like that. And I think that's, Kobe Bryant, right? We loved that guy was just the best competitor. And whether the ball went through the hoop or not is another thing. But you just knew that guy was going to sell out every night. And Tom Brady was never going to give up. And Julian Edelman, who's 5'6", is never going to not go over the middle to catch the ball. And these are the things that I think that we have to do next is, and we've just done this, we came out with a 3-part series on Paramount Plus. It's like an intro to SailGP, but we need to go deeper and introduce ourselves to these fans that are out there and make them true fans that are properly engaged. And to me, that's going to be the make or break of SailGP, whether we're really going to hit it out of the park, or we're going to kind of, I think what we've done is great. What the league has done is great, but if we're going to like really hit it out of the park, I think that's where we have to go.
Make people care about the athletes after the race is over and to stay engaged with them.
Yeah. We need to, people either love to love people or love to hate people. Either one is a fan.
Yeah.
And that's the secret sauce right there is bringing it closer together. And it's not easy, but yeah, that's the next thing that we're focused on.
I'm with Mike Buckley. He is the co-owner of the United States SailGP team. Mike, I want to say thanks for the time. But before I let you go, I'm going to put you in the lightning round. This is a series of questions. I mean, this is really going to test the competitor in you because you don't really have any idea what's about to happen. So, are you ready?
I missed this one in the brief.
And you did miss this one in the brief. This is purposefully kept out of the brief, Buckley. So, you think you're ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do this thing. All right, lightning round question number 1. Mike Buckley, what's the closest you've ever come to sinking a boat?
Oh, Bermuda 2024.
All right, can you give me a quick sense of circumstances?
After the start in the practice race on Friday, unfortunately, somebody hit a wrong button. Oop. And we went from going about 60 miles an hour in a straight line to all being ejected and capsizing.
Yeah. Okay. That's maybe a story we'll leave in the back.
100 million people found out about SailGP that day. So
one of the best Instagram moments ever.
Yeah, that was the glass half full after.
No such thing as bad publicity. Lightning round question number 2. You are from Cape Cod, like we've established. What's the best place to get fried seafood on Cape Cod?
Cooks. That was my spot as a kid. I don't know if it's still there, but that was
which town?
They had a couple of them, but Hyannis was one I always went to.
All right, well, take it that like the immediacy with which Cooks came to the top of your minds makes it. I'm sure have to visit that one the next time we're there. All right, like we talked about, you discovered sailing in high school. Thought you'd be playing football or lacrosse. What was the maybe those sports aren't for me moment? Was there like a, oh my God, that guy's 6'7" kind of thing?
I think my freshman year, just, I was a boy. I was 13 years old. I don't even think I had hair on my legs or armpits or anything like that. Showed up and I was, there were these Canadian guys that were, 18-year-old freshmen. It was like, oh man, I love this sport, but these guys are going to kick my ass.
I love this sport, but not that much.
Yeah, it was a sad but obvious moment for me.
Okay. You once joked about putting up a tattoo parlor at the New York race. What would you think would be the most popular tattoo design?
Did I really joke about that?
You really did.
Yeah, I got that actually from I saw that at a PBR, professional bull riding. That's where I got that from. In the hotel room across from MSG, they were giving away free tattoos, and there was a line out the door. Yeah, I don't know. Works for PBR. I don't know if it worked for us, though.
All right, last one. What is your peak non-competitive sailing experience when you really close your eyes and go back to that moment on the water that makes you go, yeah, that's it?
That's a tough one.
Sure, there's several.
I don't know if it is a sailing moment, but there's nothing like being on a boat at sunset or just after sunset off of New York City. Seeing the New York City skyline is with all the buildings is just incredible. And that for me, I love looking back and thinking about all the people that built the city, the people that are still working, trading stock in some other country, acting, designing a dress or shoes or whatever the hell they're doing. For me, that's like my inspirational moment when I'm out on the water and get to look back. And sometimes I get to do that with the kids at Hudson River Community Sailing, which is even cooler. So yeah, I would say that.
Mike Buckley, thanks for the time, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sports Business Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed it, we always appreciate a subscribe, share, comment, or like. And if you're the social type, you can always follow us in all the usual places. Don't forget, past episodes are located at adcpartners.com/podcast. A quick shout out to Scott Holmes for composing our theme music. This podcast is a production of ADC Partners. All rights are reserved.